Welcome to Paperbound Realms, where fiction isn't just something you read.
It's something you experience, explore, and have fun with. I'm Brian M.
I'm Frosty. How's it going today, Brian?
It's going, man. Everything's great. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. It's nice and kind of warm here, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
Not covered
It's
in snow.
warming up here, but it's still we have our days where it's just like chilly, and I'm ready for that spring weather to start kicking in soon.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's cut right to the chase. Why are we here today? What are we doing? What's this about? What's going on?
Well, I actually canceled my Pilates class to be here. No.
Oh, oh.
um,
Huh.
well, I just well, for me, we've been talking about, fiction and, kind of how our experiences with books have been shaped as we've gotten older and
Yeah.
all of that. We kind of come from different backgrounds of reading and just been messaging and like talking a lot. And that just, we thought it would be a great idea to share our ideas with, and conversations with other people that are interested and, how books aren't just stories, they're experiences, and how you and I have been really connecting with those experiences.
Yeah, it's honestly been really great, man, because I do have friends that are very much readers, and it's great to talk
Mhm.
to them. But you and I share, I mean, we've been friends for a long time, so we share that background with each other, but we share a
Yeah.
lot of similar interest in what we're reading and the type of fantasy and sci-fi that we're delving into.
Mhm.
And, my fiance and I decided to read Lord of the Rings together because we're both huge fans. And we started, and then I found out you also started reading The Fellowship of the Rings around the
Yep.
same, or Ring rather, around the same
Yep.
time. So I'm like, what are the odds of that? Like,
Yeah.
if we're all reading the same book and we're all kind of delving into that same world, that warrants more discussion than just text messages or random video messages. So
Absolutely.
if we're gonna hold these long conversations, why not record it? Why not get other
Mhm.
people involved and have some fun with this and build a little community here? So
Yep.
I'm excited to get this going.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Definitely, I was the timing of that was pretty funny because I had just finished The Hobbit. Because when you're online looking at forums and things, because my background, I come from a lot of nonfiction, biographies,
Right.
stuff like that, self help, and so fiction's I'm pretty new to, for all practical purposes, to the realm of fiction. No pun intended. Um, and so I'm kind of learning and growing and getting recommendations from other people and the way that they see certain things. And you know this because we've talked about it before, how
Right.
you can read a chapter or a page and how your perception of the character and the world and all of that may be different. Even the way
Yeah.
that they say certain things may hit you in a different way. So you're kind of in a sort of, you're dialoguing with the author, but you're kind of bringing your worldview and experience into that world as well to a degree, and I just find that very fascinating, especially with fiction.
Yes.
Um, and so, like you got me on The Expanse, like I've been, those are my kind of in between books because it's kind of a bit of a bigger series.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's been really cool to just see how how people navigate some of those challenges. And I mean, my biggest thing was that really got me into like, okay, I'm going to read Lord of the Rings now, was how the themes of like friendship and loyalty that you pick up in The Hobbit and that kind of are also reflected. Of course, I'm only on the first book of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I'm so
Okay. Yeah.
deeply invested because I kind of came from the opposite boat. I started with the movies,
Right.
not the extended edition. Don't get mad, everybody, but the but kind of, so that's kind of my perception. But it's been a while since I've seen it, so it hasn't completely, like, it's not book breaking to me to go back
Sure.
and read
Yeah.
those books.
Plus, there's so much in the books that are not in the movies. There's entire
Oh yeah.
characters that are significant that are not even in the movies. So
Right. And then of course with the books too, you're not on the same kind of time constraint within a.
Right.
I know 3 hours seems like a long movie, but really when you're comparing it to three books, really getting to unfold these characters and all of that is really fascinating to me. And then of course the world building. I'm a sucker for world building. Some people are like, okay, well if the exposition is crazy and I don't have time. But for me it's like, wow, I want to go live in the Shire and and eat 7 meals a day and drink tea and smoke, the pipe weed and just hang out for a little bit. Um, so yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at. So with this community kind of redirecting, back to the original statement is like I'm learning just as much as somebody for all practical purposes pretty new to
Okay.
fiction.
That's
So
actually a really neat thing that I want to kind of talk to you about is what was that like transitioning point for you? Because you said you come from a lot of nonfiction. I know you read a lot of history and philosophy, self
yeah,
help, and so forth. What I know you said like the themes of friendship and everything, but what
yeah,
was the kicker for you that kind of transitioned into fiction? What drew you to that, and what was your first foray into this new genre?
yeah. Well, I mean, for me, the first big leap was I don't remember exactly how I had found it, but for
Okay,
some reason, because I'm big into like dystopian stuff, and
okay,
Aldous Huxley's Brave New World was like my real
okay.
first dive into fiction, and I'm like, holy moly, I mean this book's older, but a lot of the issues and kind of uh societal things we have, it's so amazing that a book that's fiction captured that, and of course it's a little over the top, and the characters,
Sure.
it still reminds you you're in a fictional world, but on this layer you're like, wow, and so that was my first, my mind open. I'm like, dude, there is something to this. And then I got into more like kooky. The first like series that I really dove into. I was a big Dexter fan, the TV
Oh
show.
yeah, yeah.
And then somebody's like, hey, dude, did you check out the book by Jeff Lindsay or books? I'm like, no, I didn't even really realize there were. And I mean, they're of course compared to the TV show, they're way over the top. They're just a
Oh really?
fun. Oh yeah, they're awesome. I mean, on the grand scheme, depending on what literature you're connecting it to, but it's for me, it was one of those like I was working a stressful retail job at the time, so it was
Okay.
nice to just come home, and reading isn't a completely passive thing. Like there's still kind of work involved, but I
Right.
found myself enjoying it. Like it was
That's
just as
cool.
good as sitting down and watching an episode of Dexter, and I'm like,
Okay.
wow. So that kind of theater of the mind sort of thing started to connect where I was watching a movie in my brain and I wasn't even really like, I mean chapters were going by and I'm like, crap. Like I'm not
Yeah.
sitting here just reading a book. I'm like, whoa, like I'm right here, and so that was kind of my the pathways into it. And then of course then came 1984 and Animal Farm because I kind of stayed on that path. Fahrenheit,
Yes. Yeah.
that kind of dystopian dark feel. I just love that setting, sci-fi.
Oh yeah.
um yeah, and then a number of just random collected works later, you and I had connected up at some point, and you're like, dude, oh yeah, you're into fiction. You should check out The Expanse. And I'm like, okay. And so here I am. I think I'm about to start the fourth book. So I still have a habit. I still mix nonfiction in. So I'll do like a fiction book, and then I'll also read like a nonfiction,
Oh, that's
or I'll do
excellent.
like
I
a
think you should.
sci-fi. Yeah, I'll do like a sci-fi and like a medieval. So, how about
Okay.
you? What's your background looking like with fiction and all of that?
Uh, First of all, I think it's pretty cool that a series like Dexter got you down like a like
Yeah,
this fiction path, this
yeah,
novel path. Um, I've always appreciated things, kind of like you were saying. You watch this movie in your head from the words. I've always appreciated things that made you think outside the box. This does
hmm
not exist, So based on this person's description, you need to use your imagination to make it real, whether it's a creature or an item or an ability that some person has, whatever the case may be, a location, any of it. I love it. Anything that's imaginative, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
So even as a kid, because I grew up loving reading, I read a lot of short fantasy. I read a lot of like Goosebumps. I did
Oh
read
yeah.
a lot of history,
Hmm.
and also I don't remember what the series was called, but when we were kids, there were these short books about animals. One would be dolphins, one would be some kind of a bug, one would be dogs, one would be whales. Like, it was just, I would read kind of a brief, not anatomy book, but just the habits and anatomy of animals and stuff. I found it fascinating.
Hmm.
So the desire has always been there. I think what really kicked off my real love for fiction was my third grade teacher, actually. She realized early on that I liked anything that was imaginative, and she asked me one day if I had ever read The Chronicles of Narnia. I said, I have no idea what that is. So she introduced me to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe,
Yeah.
and I fell in love. I was like, this is everything that I love about imagination and fantasy. I was always into swords and shields and wars and stuff. And I found out that it's actually not the first book in the series. So for weeks, I was going back to the library, the school library, trying to find the first book, and then the third book, and then the fourth book. I think there's seven in
Yeah.
the whole series, and I ate it up. I think I read the whole
Hmm.
series within like a month or two, and that really opened the door for like what was possible in a whole new part of reading that I didn't know existed at the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that Chronicles of Narnia was kind of the gateway for me into I wanted to read Lord of the Rings. I wanted to read more traditional fantasy, what was popular in the 90s at that time. I just aged myself. I'm old, okay? Get over it. But um, yeah, it just the Chronicles of Narnia really opened that door, and I also then found out because I was always a huge Star Wars nut, and I found out Star Wars has hundreds of books in the extended universe, and I
Yeah.
wanted to get a hold of all of those and read all of those, and they were fascinating. So it was just neat that there was more story than just what movies or TV shows offered, and then some. And it was just as a
Hmm.
kid that was mind blowing to me. I loved it. I did fall off for a while. I didn't read for a chunk of my life, just got busy with stuff.
Yeah.
I still had a book. I would still read a book here and there,
Hmm.
but it was 2018, I believe, maybe 2017, somewhere in there, where I kind of rediscovered my love for books. I happened to go into a bookstore that was having like a buy one get one sale, and I was like, I haven't read anything in a while. Let me grab something on this sale and see what happens. So I picked up two books. One was a murder mystery whodunit kind of book, which was enjoyable, but the other one was called Anno Dracula by Kim Newman. And for somebody who loves gothic horror and mystery, thriller with fantastical elements, this book hooked me. I could not put it down because it's got Dracula, it's got um, werewolves and Doctor Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like it's got all these elements packed into one world, one story. And even though like Doctor Jekyll, Mr. Hyde may not be a big part of that particular story, he's still there. It's still mentioned, and in your brain, you're like, oh snap! You can see where like the things connect and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper is mentioned, and there's a whole new spin on Jack the Ripper that I haven't seen before, and it was really cool. So that kind of got me back into reading. And you
Hmm.
mentioned The Expanse. That's kind of my thing. We can't talk about books without me bringing up The Expanse. I know some people are scared to talk about it, but every
Yeah.
friend that I have mentioned The Expanse to,
Yeah.
and they have started reading it, every single person has enjoyed it. So I'm just
Hmm.
saying, I'm just saying. But after reading Anno Dracula, going back to the sci-fi fantasy section of the bookstore, I saw the Expanse books, and they're
Yeah.
bright, they're big, they're colorful, they pop, they grab your attention, and
And
I picked up the
it's
first
just
book.
genuinely a good sci-fi romp through the universe. I mean, that's what I
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
about it. It's very accessible. The character. the development, and that's kind of a side thing for me too is as I'm reading more fiction, as I'm seeing different authors, different genres, I'm really seeing how unique their voice is.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, where some of the classic literature, Tolkien especially, very fixated on building the immediate world around and then raising it up, where
Right.
where the Expanse, on the other hand, like, yeah, you do get that world building, but it's really the action that's just like, wow, okay, we're gonna put these people in a really crazy, insane, you know, situation and see how they navigate it. And I mean, I
Yeah.
know that can be said about any story, but watching the way they go through it, like for me, kind of going into the bookstore and just picking a book. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, but I believe it was Chris Ames. He wrote a book called Kings of the Wild. It was an impulse buy,
Oh,
and
Nicholas Eames.
Nicholas Eames.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it was just an impulse. I'm like, I didn't think anything of it. The book was just sitting there as like a good read. I'm like, okay, what? I'm still, again, kind of new to the realm
Right.
of this. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just try it. And, he mentions how he took like bands, like warrior
Yes.
bands. Like, what if they were like rock stars,
Yeah.
And bro, from start to finish, I was just completely enveloped into this. And I just learned relatively recently there's a second book out there,
Bloody
and
Rose. Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, that's really cool. But he was very punchy with his delivery and kind of, still balance that world building, but the characters, you're just like, gosh, man, I definitely go to some sort of tavern and drink with these guys because they're just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then kind of the situation, again, putting them in that situation, these guys are kind of older, they have kids, and
Right.
his best friend comes to him like, dude, I need your help. And so what do you do? What are you going to do?
Something we would
And
do.
yeah, so it was just really cool, a really great, like I said, just romp through that world. And I'm still putting different pieces together and relating different things. And for me, I don't know what your day-to-day reading habit looks like, but like, for me, being in a world inundated with that technology, stepping back to books. However, I will put a little asterisk next
Oh.
to this. I love audiobooks too.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
When I'm in a bigger read, I will, because I've got a long commute. So when I'm in the car, I'll flip the audiobook on, and then as soon as I get the chance to crack the book open right where I left off, I'll do it. And it kind of
Okay.
has been helping me. Unbelievable. The Andy Serkis, I did The Hobbit with him,
Okay. Nice.
with the audiobook, and it was just phenomenal.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so kind of finding a way your busy schedule to be able to
Right.
continue to read and enjoy is just amazing too. And then of course another little side tangent that's helped pull me in even more is the Fable app. And of course we're not sponsored or anything else, but it's just an enjoyable. I broke away from Goodreads because I know even in Fable you can set the la- last year and the year before were a little rough reading because I didn't feel like I absorbed, because they, how you can set your reading
Your
goals
reading
for the
goals.
year.
Yeah.
I was reading for numbers. I wasn't reading for myself. And of course, we can talk about that in another video,
Yeah.
but that was
Definitely.
something else that I kind of learned from reading more is like I'd rather just slow down and just live in this world for a little bit, for the however many pages I can, and
Absolutely.
then go bug you with all my ideas and nerd out about it.
You bring up two interesting points. The one is about audiobooks. So you're saying that you listen to the audiobook of, we'll say, Fellowship of the Ring, for example,
Yeah,
on your way to and from work, and when you get home, you'll actually crack open the book where the audiobook left off and read the pages.
yeah, yeah,
So that's interesting. That's pretty neat, and it would help break that time down a little bit and you don't have to escape from that particular world. You can stay in that world for longer. For
Yeah.
me, when I worked an office job a few years back, I would put an audiobook in my earbud, and I would listen to, like I did Stephen King's The Dark Tower on audiobook.
Hmm.
Fantastic, by the way. The narrators for that were amazing. But I would do The Dark Tower at work through audiobook. And when I got home, I was reading The Expanse and something else at the time. But I would physically read The Expanse. And it's just interesting to see the different uses. Like, you use it to stay in that universe. I actually separated the two. So audiobook, I
Okay.
was in one universe. Physically reading, I was in a completely different world. And I wonder if that would make it more or less confusing for people who do want to read multiple books at once. I think it helped me because we have The Dark Tower, which is a modern-esque fantasy versus a
Right.
futuristic space age. It wasn't that hard to keep them separated. But if you were doing
Yeah.
an audiobook for a fantasy and reading another fantasy, I wonder if they would start to like
I would
confuse a little bit.
imagine. I would imagine, and see, and that's why I try, to, I've got a kid, and then we work, and then my wife works. She's going to school,
Right.
so we got a lot of moving parts, so I've got to try
Yeah.
to make squeeze as much juice out of every hour and minute that I
Sure.
can, and and then of course I'm trying to cultivate good habits, because my son, I'll read to him. I mean, he's only 9 months old, but I'll still sit
So
there and
yeah.
do the silly voices but anyway, I try to break it up. So either a sci-fi and a medieval, because you're not really. I don't remember any spaceships in Lord of the Rings. So it's easier for me to keep those differentiated, or nonfiction and whatever fiction I'm reading at the
I
time.
like that
So
combo. That's a good idea.
there's a clear delineation. Um, Now, I will say the hardest part is having Andy Serkis narrate with his just crunchy, awesome voice, and then going back home and listening to my tenor, nasally, whatever I have going on at the time. The inner dialogue, I find myself, and I don't know if you do this, but I'll read kind of in what I imagine their
Yes.
whatever their character is. I try to, I've gotten in kind of a habit, and it's helped make the reading richer, like seeing the world through a character's eyes. And depending on what's going on, I may change the character, but that is the one kind of caveat. Jumping from an audiobook that's narrated really well back to the book is a little bit of that flavor does go missing sometimes. But at the
That's
same
fair.
time, when you're really focused on that world, and just it's not as a high barrier to entry as you would think. Um, Especially with stuff like Spotify. We're not Spotify, we're not sponsored by them either. But a lot of
No
those
sponsors. No
audiobooks
sponsors.
are free yet. But yeah, but they're free. They're accessible. And I
Right.
can connect them right to my car and just cruise. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of near Knoxville, and traffic is insane right now.
Oh, I
So
imagine. Yeah.
instead of it's also kind of served as a way for me to be a little bit more in the moment, kind of just enjoying my time. It takes that tedium away. So even if I am stop and go traffic for 45 minutes or an hour, it's okay because I get to hang out with Samwise and Frodo, and,
Right.
listen to Frodo waiting for Gandalf for another 8 days before he moves. uh, but yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell where I'm at with everything. It's still an overwhelming, beautiful chaos that I'm trying to. But I think that's the beauty of it, though, is
Right.
there's
Oh,
so
absolutely.
much out there, and that's why I'm happy we have Paperback Realms, where we can kind of dissect this stuff, and you can help me remember authors' names properly, and and you know and
Yeah.
and just dissect it and really appreciate it, because that's the
Yes.
thing is there's so many people out there. I know it. I know there's so many people, because I was like that up until this point, and before I got Fable, where I didn't have anybody to nerd out with over it.
Right.
And and my wife, she's busy, so I'm sitting here trying to tell her, the importance of why Frodo needs to throw this ring in a volcano, and she's trying to cook chili, and she's like, "Will you just go away?" You know, and so it's just nice to have that outlet, and
Yeah.
without the pressure of, and not that nothing against them, but without having the pressure of quotas and all that for a book club, because you want
Right.
to
Yeah.
bring something to the table, and or have a different view of things, and so that time commitment, that's been my biggest thing. Time has definitely been my biggest hurdle and enemy here lately. But books have been kind of helping keep me grounded regardless of whether they're fiction or not.
That's
So
awesome. That's awesome, man. And yeah, it
yeah.
is nice to have an outlet to. I feel like if you conversate about these books and these stories with other people, it not only adds new perspectives, because you can see things like maybe I read it one way and you read it a different way, and we can
Yeah.
blow each other's minds with like how we saw it the way we did, but it also
Yeah.
helps keep it deeper ingrained in your brain. It's one thing to read a book and be like, hey, that was amazing and move on. But if we talk about it and keep it alive and keep it fresh, it helps the
Right.
story sink in that much more and it's that much more of an experience overall. And,
Yeah.
a good book can be turned into a great book with more communication.
But even paralleling off of that, like some companions that you just fall in love with, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, asking, and of course we'll kind of talk about that as time goes forward, but just using the fiction as a leaping point for other just random discussions, like
Yeah, absolutely.
who would you have dinner with? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It would just be so crazy to, like, who's your favorite companions, like worst written, villain or whatever,
yeah.
and so, but yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you could talk about even outside of just the immediate book that are connected to the book, but not necessarily just the book too. Like, I
Sure.
mean, for us to not do, the thing is too, and I gotta commend a lot of the booktubers and book talkers, and there are some
Yes.
extremely intelligent people that I probably wouldn't even hold a candle to with the way they
Same.
analyze, and they've been doing this so long and have thought so deeply on it. I love that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I like about what we're doing is it's just kind of two guys just talking about. We're not reviewing the book. We're not really psychoanalyzing. We're not coming at it from a super academic perspective. It's just us
Right.
talking books, man.
Being,
you know.
being nerds. Like,
Yeah, and I love that. And don't get me wrong, I still love watching the philosophy videos and some of the deeper psychological and
yeah.
impacts of some of those books too. But I just I wouldn't even know where to begin with all that, and so just to kind of get those feelings and thoughts out there, and I'm hoping there's other people that feel the same way, that and
Yeah.
please feel free, leave your comments down below. What was your first book? What got you into reading? I just want to start a discussion and make recommendations. You find a crazy
Yep.
book that's whatever, there is nothing off the table. If it's out there, I'm open to reading it. Like I said, it's just the time aspect, um, but expanding my repertoire of fiction too. So
Well, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because there's actually a quote. It's not a new quote, but I discovered it recently from Murakami that says if you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. And I feel like
mhm.
that kind of goes along with like that's why we want like that's why we're doing this video right now. We want to talk to all of you as well. We want the comments, we want the discussions, we want to explore your recommendations. So we're not just reading the same stuff. We want to expand that horizon and really like broaden the mind. It's
Yeah, yeah,
exciting. It's awesome.
definitely. And then kind of going back, so like right now, I don't know, I know you're still kind of working through Lord of the Rings, but
Mhm.
for me, it's been Fellowship of the Ring. That's been,
Nice.
my fiction, and then for my nonfiction, how to read a book.
Hey, I mean, yeah,
Prerequisite. prerequisite is you have to be able to initially read to get through this book. I just thought it was kind of humorous, but kind of going back, the reason that I chose the books that I did this time around is Tolkien's it's classic literature at this point,
Yeah,
and
it is. Yeah.
I'm a huge D&D guy. I don't really play it much, but I just love the multiverse and the characters, and I
Right.
love the games and all that. But how to read a book, reading things more deeply and diving in, and why do we read? And so this book is in parallel with Lord of the Rings specifically because some of the advanced topics and stuff that Mortimer Adler is covering in How to Read a Book, I can kind of extrapolate from. There's a lot of depth to Lord of the Rings. And
Oh,
so that's
absolutely.
why
Yeah.
I pretty much started there. I mean, there was other stuff that I read in the past, but I'm kind of just actively trying to apply some of the things that I'm learning to strengthen that. Where I'm not simply just reading a book. I'm assimilating it and kind of
Yeah.
chewing on it, and getting the most I can out of it. But
That's awesome, man. That's really cool.
yeah. So how about you? What are you reading? What you
Well,
got?
similar to you, as we've already discussed, Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
I love the black and yellow. Sorry, I'm a sucker
Me
for that.
too. Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice.
This is the book that I am taking my time with. Being such a big fan of the movies and the overall aspect of the story, I really want to, like you were saying earlier, soak it in, absorb it. I don't want to blow through it. I'm going to take
Right.
my time reading this, even if it takes a couple of months. That's totally fine
Hmm.
with me. But I'm also on the side reading The Ritual,
Okay.
which the Netflix movie interested me enough to want to read the book. Now, it does say it's reconnecting, so I hope we're still connected and recording. Sorry, a little technical malfunction. I'm going to keep going because it looks like we're fine, but the Netflix movie, I watched the synopsis and it seemed really interesting. So I'm like, let me read the book. And the book covers way more detail than the movie. And it's just, I don't know, it's been a fun. I don't even want to call it straight horror. It's more like a psychological thriller at this
Okay.
point. Now I am, I don't know, 60, 70% of the way through the books. I'm getting close to the end. I'm sure things are going to ramp up. But it's been a very much like you are inside the head of this person, primarily this one POV. And it's focusing more on the struggles of growing older, maturing, friendship, losing your best mates, and how to deal with that. And then everybody's kind of put in this dire situation, and true colors are shown, and then bad stuff starts happening, and I don't know. It's been a fascinating ride, but it's been a quick
Yeah.
one too. I think I started a few days ago, and I'm already more than halfway through, so it's been enjoyable. So yeah, that's it for now. A little bit of manga here and there, but
Yeah.
primarily Fellowship of the Ring and the Ritual by Adam Neville.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of in the same vein. My side, like very casual is I just got really into comic books. So Daredevil just
Okay, cool.
discovered randomly. I was watching the TV show and
Yeah,
finished Man Without Fear, and now I'm just kind of hooked on that superhero for some reason. He's just so interesting how he doesn't quit. But the ritual, I'm definitely gonna have to
yeah,
check that out because that is one area that I have not really gotten into, that horror esque um, side of fiction yet. And I know that you had mentioned, I was asking you for a
fun.
recommendation, and your response was, "Oh, if there's just a book that follows these kids through a small town into adulthood with their trauma, it." And I'm like, I thought you were going there. So I think that I've got that on my backlog because man, I'm excited to
Okay,
dive into some sort of something that's gonna scare me, I guess, hopefully, or like freak me
I
out.
think it.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so because of course, I've seen the movie with Tim Curry, and he did an amazing job. But like
Yes.
there's just some things when you read it and you watch the movie, it's a different experience.
Absolutely. Oh, sure.
So I'm really excited. We'll of course bring that to the community. We'll have like a horror theme thing. I'm so excited to really dive into that side because, like I said, man, I've not done any of that yet. So that's going to be really brand new for me. Um, but yeah, so I think that I'm really excited for us to be here and be doing this,
Same here,
and I'm
man.
excited to build the community and just like I said, a place where we can nerd out and really get into those those fictional worlds and stories and people and places, and it's just going to be fantastic. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. This is awesome.
yeah.
This is exciting.
Yep. And again, we appreciate everybody watching. Please feel free to comment down below. What was your first book? What are you reading now? You know,
What's
I
your
want to
favorite
hear it.
genre? Who's your favorite
What's your
author?
favorite genre? Yeah, let's get this thing kicked off and all of that, and then of course you can connect with me on Fable. Or you can search me Brian M. Can't miss it. Little redheaded icon. Just look for the ginger profile picture. So
Yep, you can find me as well. I'm JRFrost Reads, no spaces. I'm on Fable and Instagram.
awesome. All right. Any final words for the audience at home?
Well, I always like to say follow the path of the beam. You may not get that yet. Trust me, we'll get into it. But
Okay.
follow the path of the beam. How about you, Brian?
Just keep reading, keep reading, keep learning, keep growing, and let's share some ideas. Very excited to be here. Very excited to have you guys join us today and have your time. It means a lot to us. And please feel free to connect.
Absolutely.
So,
We'll see y'all
all
next
right.
time.
In the meantime, Paperbound Realms signing off.
Oh. Okay.
See you guys.